Okay, truth be told, I have never been more excited about a conversation than the one I'm about to have with Dr. Daniel Gartenberg, because I have sleep problems. So this is so personal. But it's not just about me. It's about millions of people who toss and turn and don't sleep well. And we're going to talk to one of the premier scientists in this field. He is also the CEO of Sleep Space. He's an adjunct professor at Penn State University in the Department of Behavioral Health. After developing sleep improvement technologies for 15 years, he is on a mission. He's getting grants. He's talking around the world to help people understand that we can solve this horrible health problem that affects billions of people. And today we're going to get into why we don't sleep well, what happens if you don't sleep well, which is really depressing, and some of the technologies that Daniel is working on to help us actually get better sleep. Daniel, welcome to Swell. I was just looking at your TED Talk. It's gone viral. And of course, people are so sensitive to their own private hell that they go through at night. And I think that's why you've been top of mind for a lot of people who are doing the journalism around this and getting you on shows and having you talk. I'm wondering, it might have gotten worse during COVID. I don't know. We can talk about that. But first of all, I hope you've just recently had a good night's sleep. And I appreciate you being on Swell. I think this community is so ready to hear about your expertise and kind of bust into some of the more difficult concepts, because knowledge is not power when it comes to sleeping. I know a lot about sleep deprivation, and it still doesn't help me sleep. So I do a lot of different meditations, and I take some melatonin and CBD, and sometimes I take stuff stronger. And other times I'm sleeping well. So I want to ask the first question, which is, when somebody identifies themselves as someone who has a sleep problem, is that a problem right there? Because you're sort of creating a storm by naming it and making it a problem. How much of our sleep problems are physical and how much of them are psychological? And do you make that delineation? And what's your advice for people who have that story in their head? Oh, I sleep horribly. Like, is that the first line of offense right there? Like, don't say that you are a horrible sleeper because it makes it true. Or are you more of a scientist that says, if you don't sleep well, you don't sleep well? It's true. Let's look at the psychology of framing our sleep habits first. Thanks.
Hello. I don't sleep well sometimes because I wake up going to the bathroom a lot, and that can interfere with sleeping. Sometimes I get caught up in doing something I love at night, and I don't go to bed when I should. And sometimes I can't sleep anyway. So I do something until I fall asleep. Having things on my mind can help me not to sleep. If I do go to sleep with things on my mind, I have crazy dreams sometimes. That makes me get up early. I notice that when my mind is clear and when I'm happier in life, I can sleep. Thank you.
Hi, Deborah. It's a great question about the psychology of, if someone says they're having a sleep problem, is that a problem in and of itself? And it reminds me of what one of my mentors once said to me, Michael Grandner. And he once said that in a way, insomnia is just a complaint. And while there's some truth to that, there are really some rules that define insomnia, and, it's more than just a complaint as well. So I think the first thing is to delineate something that's relatively more psychological when it comes to sleep problems, such as insomnia, with something that's more physical and medical, such as sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, or REM behavior sleep disorder. And so some of these have a more or less behavioral component to them, and so they're more or less psychological. And as you know, if you have sleep apnea, basically you should really go to a pulmonologist or even a dentist who can help with something like this. And that's sort of another class of issues than someone who's having problems falling asleep and staying asleep. such as what's known as insomnia, where a psychologist usually addresses that issue. And there's about 5,000 people trained in behavioral sleep medicine who are the best people for dealing with this problem of insomnia. Actually, it's recommended to see these people, not necessarily to take a sleeping medicine, a drug that's only showing efficacy in the short term. Really changing our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors around sleep is the main way to address something like insomnia. And when it comes to what that actually means, there's really a prominent theory called the 3P model, which basically says that you have predisposing traits that make you more or less susceptible to something like insomnia. And some people are even born with tenser muscles or more worrisome thinking style. And so it's somewhat hereditary. And what often happens is you have events that trigger you into a bout of insomnia, such as a parent dying, some stress at work, and everyone sort of can relate to these periodic insomnia instances. When insomnia becomes chronic and really more problematic is when you start forming behaviors around these periodic instances, such as spending a lot of time in bed, which is maladaptive to falling asleep. And that's the 3P model in a nutshell. And what we typically say when you have a problem with falling asleep and staying asleep, i.e. insomnia, is that usually the test is if you perceive being awake in bed for more than 15% of the time on a regular basis. So basically, if you're spending 10 hours in bed and 2 hours are awake, that's 20%. If you're doing that on a regular basis, we sort of call that problematic. And counterintuitively, when you have this issue, you should actually spend less time in bed. So the recommendation is to spend around 7 to 9 hours in bed. That's what the consensus report is by a group of scientists. And what happens if you have insomnia, you think, oh my God, I need to spend 7 hours in bed, but I'm up for 50% of the time, so I'm going to spend, 12 hours in bed. And now what that does, you should actually do the exact opposite. You should, if anything, spend less time in bed. Because at the day, humans are basically association machines. I like to think of us as Pavlovian dogs. And when we start associating being awake in bed, that actually just makes the problem worse. And this is where stimulus control comes in as well. So, you want to save your bed for sleep and sex only, and also you want to only sleep in your bed and not be awake and alert in your bed. So now getting back to your question, is thinking you have a sleep problem an issue in and of itself? Basically, if you have problems falling asleep and staying asleep, it can, and you think you have these problems, it can make things worse. There's definitely some truth to that, even though it's much more, complicated than that. And I know a lot of times if you're a type A person, sort of the harder you try to do something, the more difficult it becomes. And that's because sleep is so much about letting go. So while there is some truth to that, there's behavioral techniques that we can do. And even if you're someone who meditates, which is a good thing, sometimes you can try too hard to meditate and forget that it's important to let go and not be too hard on yourself. So that's the main recommendation that I have for you. Hi there. It's a common problem, the not being able to, or waking up in the middle of the night because of going to the bathroom. A simple hack is to try to front load your liquid consumption to the earlier parts of the day. But also I would keep in mind that if you're only awake for a small amount of time, like a couple minutes, it's probably not that big of an issue. And it's actually completely natural for humans to wake up periodically throughout the night, putter around, and then go back to sleep. It's only problematic if you're really not being able to fall asleep for a long period of time. Now, for the other thing where, sometimes you're doing an activity and you can't fall asleep, I think it's important to just be in touch with your body there. If you are particularly wound up because you're engaged in some activity or you have to do work, then be aware of that and don't try to sleep actually. Instead, go to bed only when you're tired, and this will help create this association with your bed and sleeping. And on those days where you know you're particularly wound up, maybe you could take a warm bath or do some kind of relaxation exercise to address the problem. Hope it's helpful.
Hello, thank you for your reply. Thank you for all your information. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Dan, so happy to have your voice here, and thank you for being so generous with your responses. It's just great advice, by the way, to take it seriously, to get help if it's more than 20%, and also to, be able to understand some of the mechanisms inside our own beings that we have to understand before we start medicating or trying crazy ideas. I love the advice you give about not going to bed if you're not tired. I think it resonates with me a lot. I think sometimes going to bed too early with your body amped up is devastating, and you're not going to get sleep. I want to shift over to the passion of your work, to the work you do to understand how technology can play a role. I don't want to leave the question at all because I want you to choose and pick what you really want to tell us about right now. What's exciting to you right now about your research? What are you finding? What are you working on? One particular thing that we would understand that's kind of around the corner, or something you're actually looking at right now that's a bit tech-based that you think might be a real help to people?
So what's exciting me right now about sleep is this prospect of basically programming human consciousness. So there's something in sleep called targeted memory reactivation, which is basically this idea that during the day we can associate stimuli with doing various tasks. So the classic study is you smell roses while you're doing some kind of cognitive assessment. And then later on, you replay that smell of roses while someone is dreaming. And this is something that always really excited me, because what they found is that this actually helps people remember that cognitive task and perform better on that cognitive task the next day. Basically, I like to think of it as neural programming. So if we can create these associations with stimuli during the day and replay them at night, we can basically program our human consciousness. And I think that with all the technology and the social media and so much stimuli throughout the day, it's becoming more and more important for us to take control of our brains. And sleep is the way that we do this, because sleep is essentially how we process information and integrate it into our long-term personalities. So my research has been focused on how to do this using the science of sound. So we use sound for lots of different things, helping people wind down, blocking out noise pollution. And the next wave of sleep technology, I think, is using sound to enhance deep sleep and augment human consciousness.
Dan, thank you so much. I was thinking about sound. I listen to sound a lot when I go to sleep. I think a lot of people have these apps that have music and meditation. Can you talk about the eardrum receiving sound waves and the idea of it receiving stimulus, and yet the stimulus is calming you down and making you sleep? And I think what you're going to tell me has to do with the association in the brain as opposed to just a mechanical response to the vibration of that sound. What's the balance there between our sort of brain relationship to the nature of the sound? Like maybe it's ocean. Do we know it's ocean, or does the ear just like the sound of an ocean? And can you drop into this a little more and let us understand this research? Because I'm so interested. There's so many people that get these sound apps and they don't know which one to choose, which one's better for them. They talk about megahertz and REM being affected by certain frequencies. Can you just dive in that a little more? I really appreciate your time, and we could take a break after this and see if some more people have ideas and thoughts. I'm going to do some homework after I hear your response, and I'm going to choose a particular sound tonight based on what you tell me to do. So no pressure, but I want to be a guinea pig. Thanks.
Hello, good evening. This is Prabha here. Such a beautiful topic. If sleep has to be so natural, why then we are so bad about it? Why then we are bad at it? I do understand sleep is very natural cause for any born in this world, and being a human, obviously we sleep for hours together when we are at peace, but sleep also disturbs our body, because in case we sleep for long hours, we fail to do our work. The commitment, the responsibility that we have does not allow us to sleep properly. Sometimes the dreams that we see in the sleep also embarrasses us. It's a precarious situation wherein we have to get up and we have to go to the restroom, or we have to keep drinking some water. We feel so embarrassed. If it is a good dream, we feel happy about it, and sometimes dreams are also not good in sleeps. And then, as you said, that we are given medicines for getting our sleep. That is so unnatural, because we don't get our sleep by ourselves. We have to be intoxicated to some third party thing, and we have to get the sleep from that. So we are buying, it's a kind of buying the sleep. We are not able to do things which are natural, which is a actual plan as per our body is made. But we generate sleep. We try to buy the sleep from the medicine shop or hospital. We get the sleep and we enjoy. That particular day will go without any pain. What about our entire life? Can we be addicted to the medicines that doctors give for us to sleep? Is that the only cause and reason that we can sleep? Otherwise not. I was told when I was young that physical exertions can give you some sleep. Doing a white collar job, like being in the office and just sitting and doing work together, that will not allow you to sleep peacefully. Maybe it is a disturbed or sleep of not a good kind. But when you do exercises for some time, like say 15 minutes, half an hour, meditation or some kind of a physical exercise, you generate sleep within yourself. You become tired and you go to bed properly. And yes, as somebody said in this well, that social media is also a cause. Very abruptly said, correctly. Social media, with the gadgets, we are always on and off. Every time, like babies, we keep shifting the phones. Even, I think if a baby cries, the parent won't address to the baby. But if a mobile rings, they'll go and hug it. They'll go see who is calling or what message it is. They are so dragged towards that particular thing that they are not able to come out of it. Every now and then you keep surfing something, you keep seeing something, and then how you think that you can have a good sleep? That's also a very good scenario presented here. So according to me, go to bed at the appropriate time, whatever time is defined to you. Take 8 hours of sleep, good rest, so that you tune your body accordingly, and everything will be good. Because if you don't get if you get inappropriate sleep, then you might be into a loop, because your body needs rest when it has to take rest. You cannot force your body, otherwise it will be a burden for you. You'll catch up something, you'll end up in something else. So I feel sleep is very, very essential, as food is essential and cloth is essential for a human being. Sleep is equally essential, because with a good sleep only you can have a peaceful mind and good strength and energy. Thank you so much. It was a lovely swell, and I got a good opportunity to respond to it. Thank you so much.
So the role of sound and sleep health is sort of quite complicated. We understand the science of sounds because we actually brought more than 30 people into a sleep lab at Penn State, hooked them up to EEG, these little electrodes, and played various sounds to them to understand how sounds can either promote regenerative deep sleep or actually hinder and disrupt sleep. One thing to be aware of is that abrupt sounds are definitely problematic for sleep quality. So I've even seen something as seemingly innocuous as an air conditioner turning on, resulting in the brain awakening and having an arousal, which is a bad thing. And evolutionarily, we respond to abrupt stimuli in a way that makes us wake up, probably to prevent like a predator from attacking us at night. So when you're playing sounds throughout the night, it's usually good for the sound to not be abrupt. yet we also want the brain to respond to the sound. So there's sort of this tightrope walk between getting the sound to be gradual, yet also having the brain respond to it. So to get people to have more deep sleep, we play these frequencies. It's actually the pulse rate. It's like a whooshing sound, so it's not abrupt, in the same pulse rate as your regenerative deep sleep brainwaves. That's sort of a different thing than these associations that I was talking about, which is, associating a stimuli with a relaxing state, building that association, and then playing that stimuli later on to promote that relaxing state. And we like to think about this and doing it in phases. So, the sleep space technology is unique in that we have a structured wind down, which can be anywhere from 10 minutes to 60 minutes, where you can do a meditation, play ocean waves, play desert crickets, various options, which gradually fades into what we call a smart sound machine. And what makes it smart is that it'll measure your sleep every 30 seconds and adjust the sound slightly in order to more effectively block out noise pollution like a car or snoring. And that's been shown to help with sleep quality. And then we'll play the delta wave frequency or the targeted memory reactivation sound if you enable that setting. And then we'll wake you up gradually. And sort of the right way to wake up is gradually, because it enables us to get a little extra sleep when we need it and awaken in a lighter sleep stage. So I like to either wake up with energizing chimes, a gratitude meditation, or 528 hertz or 432 hertz is another good one. So that's sort of the overarching science of how sounds can be used to relax you, get you out of the fight or flight response, and then actually augment your sleep quality. So hope that is informative, and happy to answer any other questions you might have. Hi there. I totally agree with you that the medicines can be problematic, and that's why the actual recommendation for many sleep problems, and there's a place for the medicine, but usually, as I mentioned before, it's cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is the first line of defense, and many of the medications are meant to be only used in the short term and not for a prolonged period of time. And it's a good question. Why is it that if sleep is so natural, why are humans bad at it? It's interesting. And, I think there's a couple reasons. Probably one of the main ones is that humans, unlike a lot of other animals, have chronic stress. We have these chronic stressors in our lives, and those stressors seep into our subconscious minds and our dreams. They wake us up in the middle of the night. There's a famous book, Why Don't Giraffes Get Ulcers? And it's, these many animals have a more natural way of living where they don't have these chronic stressors basically caused by our prefrontal cortex. And this is also why we have such intense dreams. We're playing out the future events, trying to figure out how to optimize our lives. And modern technology has made things more unnatural in a lot of ways, with the lights from the devices, electricity making it so our circadian rhythms are essentially out of whack. We're not in tune with the sun as much anymore. So, the circadian misalignment combined with the chronic stress, I think, is one of the main reasons why many people have a difficult time falling asleep. And what we saw in the pandemic is that it actually got worse because, we were in our homes more, we don't get as much sunlight. We're basically separated from nature more than ever. And so the reason why it's hard to do something as natural as sleep, essentially, is that humanity has become more separate from nature. So that's my feelings on it, and curious to hear what you think.
Dan, this is so interesting to connect all these dots in your answers together. It calms me down a little bit, actually. I really feel like the biological connections that you help me make in terms of rhythm, the circadian rhythm, and our body's response to stress, and the rhythms of a natural breathing human, and all the other elements that I feel like you integrate into your product. I'm so excited. I'm going to link your website here. And if you have any directions for us besides getting this app, which is one entry point into your world, please let us know. I'm so happy you're here. I hope you occasionally come back and use Swell as a place to talk to us and learn from us and us learn from you and have conversations about, things you're discovering. I can't imagine anybody not being interested in this conversation. But it's just been so wonderful to have you here. It was such an honor. And let us know if you need anything else besides this URL.
Hey, Deborah. Happy to answer any other questions you might have about sleep health, circadian rhythms, various sleep disorders. I'm continually doing research, more and more actually around sleep apnea. So there's more to come. And if you want to check it out, you and your users, I try to give it away for free for 30 days with this special link. So if you go to sleepspace.com/union, you can actually try out SleepSpace for free for 30 days. Cancel anytime beforehand. You'll get all the features like our meditations, wind downs. I'm about to release these sleep programs to address almost every sleep issue that anyone might have. And we also have a team of more than 20 coaches that specialize in almost every sleep issue, whether it's sleep training a baby, someone who's dealing with menopause and sleep problems, issues with snoring. We have you covered. So I hope you and your listeners check it out. Thanks for taking the time to talk with me. Bye. Have a good sleep.
Thank you so much for this Swellcast. It was very informative and very interesting. And I personally have had issues with sleep. Since I can remember, have always been a night person, and I've always hated mornings. And I was curious, I'm guessing that this Swell is closed at the moment, but if anyone has any information regarding this, feel free to let me know. But I have always disliked mornings. I do not feel productive in the mornings. I feel most productive at night. Hence, it is about 1:06 a.m. right now as I leave this podcast or this reply to the podcast. And I have just always been a night person, and I wanted to know if that was evolutionary or if that was hereditary or if that had some other factors involved. I did read an article that said something about, for example, back in the caveman days, we needed to have a certain percentage of individuals that were night owls, so to speak, so that they could watch over the tribe and keep them safe during the night while they were sleeping, away from predators, etc. So is it true that there's a percentage of the population that's meant to be night people? I mean, even today we need night people. Clearly, policemen, doctors, nurses, paramedics, 911 operators, etc., firefighters. So I would imagine that evolutionary, it's a positive thing, yet society seems to almost look at you like you're an alien when you tell them your sleep hours. It's not the typical get up in the early a.m. and go to sleep, before 10 p.m. So if anyone has any thoughts about that, I would love to hear it. And also, is it common for people to sleep more in the winter and less in the summer? Because I've noticed that I sleep a different amount of hours in the different seasons. So if anyone else has that, I would love to hear about that as well. And let me know if that's a common thing or not. Thanks so much for the podcast. I appreciate you guys. Take care.
Hi, good questions about is it evolutionary that some people are night owls? And essentially, I think that article you read is correct. I think a certain percentage of us have genes that actually make us more likely to be night owls, morning larks, or have a more flexible circadian rhythm. And exactly for that reason, because it's evolutionary advantageous for there to always be someone up guarding the tribe. And so, our circadian rhythm shifts as we age, where as we age, we're more likely to shift from being a night owl to being a morning lark. You might remember possibly you were even more of a night owl when you were a teenager. That's pretty common. Some people think that it's to break away from your parents, who are more likely to be a morning lark during that time. And you can actually get your genes tested for this. So 23andMe you can get a genome test, and it can say if you have the genes that make you more likely to be a night owl. And some people are very strongly a night owl and have difficulty shifting into a morning lark mindset. And it's sort of a shame because our society gives preference to morning larks. Usually work starts much earlier, and there's just a societal thing. Early bird catches the worm. But from a sleep health perspective, I think as long as you're being consistent with your bedtimes and wake times, so going to bed every time around the same time, getting enough sleep, which is essential. Oftentimes the night owl doesn't get enough sleep because there's more morning pressure from society to wake up earlier. And you're not exposing yourself to light at night, and you are exposing yourself to light in the morning. It'll probably be pretty easy to do that in the morning because it'll be bright out. But to make sure you're not getting that light at night, and if you're doing all those things, you're going to have just as healthy sleep as a morning lark. There's some different views about this. There's some people that have reported that, morning larks are less healthy. I really think there's nothing inherently unhealthy about being a night owl, that night owls are less healthy. There's nothing inherently bad about being a night owl. It's just oftentimes you, for example, sleep less when you're a night owl because of those morning pressures, and then it's unhealthy. So there's nothing causally bad necessarily about being a night owl. And I think part of this might be you're also pretty sensitive to light, it sounds like, which is why maybe you are sleeping more in the wintertime. There's less sunlight during that time. Maybe one thing that you can try is to get a happy lamp to make sure you're getting that sunlight in the morning when you wake up. If you are in the wintertime, you're more likely to be indoors and you're not getting sunlight. But there's solutions for this. There's biohacks for this, these 10,000 lux lamps. And that can sort of jumpstart your rhythm in the morning to make sure you get that sunlight that the photoreceptors in your eyes need. And that also brings me to my other point, that this is somewhat shiftable. So you have these genes, your chronobiology basically, which is if you're a night owl or a morning lark, you have epigenetics where the genes can get expressed based on the timing of meals, sunlight exposure, which is the biggest thing, the timing of exercise. So you could do things to either entrench you being more of a night owl or to try to shift to be more of a morning lark. So just because you have these genes doesn't mean that you can't engage in behaviors that can shift you in directions on the continuum of morningness and eveningness. So hope that is informative, and feel free to ask any other questions that you might have.
Great conversation, though I am not sleep deprived, and I know a lot of people do get into this problem of not being able to sleep properly or insomnia. Sometimes I do go through this phase where I'm unable to sleep, and it's purely related to stress or some thought that has emerged in my head and can't get it out. And my way of helping myself out is in two different ways. One is I get into meditation mode, and eventually I fall asleep. And the other one that I do is I tell myself, stupid, breathe, stop thinking and go to sleep. And within 5-6 minutes, it helps me go to sleep. I don't know if there's any science behind it. I have no idea. And this is the method I follow when I'm unable to sleep. But it helps. But it is great conversation to understand the science and the psychology behind it. Thank you.
Very helpful. Thank you very much for answering those questions and giving some more insights and information, things that I didn't know about. For example, I didn't know that you could get your genes tested to see if you have the propensity to be a night owl or a morning lark. So that's fascinating. And I really appreciate this podcast and all your knowledge and insights and information. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I'd love to address these sleep issues through the lens of interior design. There's so many things that we can do within our environments, I think, to investigate what's going on with our sleep and make our sleep better. For example, we all know about blue light that might be bothering us, whether that is the HVAC system panel. I know if mine is not covered at night, that can really keep me awake. Alarm panels, alarm clocks that are blinking or have blue light. But also we need to think about noise pollution outside of the home, hearing noise from other members within the home through the walls. There are also temperature issues that can affect sleep. If you really think about it through maybe our basic five senses, are we dehydrated? Are we getting enough water to stay asleep? I know someone addressed having too much water at night and having to get up a lot during the middle of the night and how that affects sleep. But there's also a lot to unpack with things that are going on that we might not be able to detect naturally. For example, I have a colleague who has a degree in building biology, and she studies the EMF sort of subtle radiations that are coming from different electronics in our bedrooms or even our homes, like our Wi-Fi systems. She was having a hard time sleeping in her room and was also having headaches at night. And she realized that the HVAC, the air conditioning and heating condenser units, were right outside of her bedroom wall. And upon further investigation, she realized that the subtle radiation that was coming from this machinery that was running throughout the night was really keeping her up. So there's a lot of stories like that. In fact, even my own son was having a hard time sleeping in his room, and I just tried everything. And it turned out that we had a router plugged in underneath his bed that helped the Wi-Fi expand to that part of the house. And I had no idea that that could be causing issues in his sleep cycle. And so anyway, just through the lens of interior design, I think doing some investigating about what our environment is like and what's going on in and around the room we sleep in is a great thing to look into. Thanks for letting me contribute.
Shelley, thank you so much for contributing to this conversation with your very specific and really kind of mind-boggling insights, really important. I think we live in a world that's so plugged in. I can't imagine it not affecting our sleep. And the way you describe things near our brains, our bodies, what we can mitigate is so significant. Like there's so many things we could do once we are looking for those problems. So thank you for bugging us a little bit, and I'll do some investigation. Thank you.
So this is a great topic for me. I'm married for my third time, and what's interesting is that each of my spouses that I've had, each husband that I have complained that they have sleep problems, that they don't sleep enough. And me, myself, I felt very comfortable with sleeping with 3 hours a night. I felt rested, I felt good, I felt energetic, and I never had any problems, but they insisted that I was not having enough sleep. And probably because they're projecting, because they felt that they didn't have enough sleep. But what's more interesting to me is that I would be in the bedroom and I would be awake and, looking through, searching or reading things, and I would hear them sleeping, snoring, deep. It sounded like a very deep, rhythmic sleep. And in the morning, they would tell me that they didn't sleep at all, that they had no sleep. They felt that and I was awake most of the night and hearing their sleep. So what's with that? Is that, could it be that why does a person feel that they're not getting enough sleep even when their breathing is heavy and rhythmic and you can hear snoring, they're not tossing and turning. Why do they feel that they're not getting enough sleep? That interests me a lot. And the thing is that for me personally, how do I get to sleep? It's not through sound, it's through visuals. So, because my partners couldn't stand any kind of sound, so they put in earplugs or whatever it was. So I would look at my phone and I would look at visuals of different things and see visuals or read things that are coming up. And that would bring me into a really deep sleep. It was that overload, the overstimuli that helped me get into sleep. Or if I listened to talk radio when in my single times when I wasn't married, I would listen to talk radio because I could hear their problems over my problems, and that canceled out, my thought process and allowed me also to relax. I just want to know, is it okay for me to have 3 hours of sleep and feel good with that? I feel I have more energy than most people. I'm excited about life. I don't have depression. But everybody keeps insisting that, I'm going to kill myself over my quote unquote lack of sleep. And this is really, on the other part of the whole sleep issue. So I want to hear some thoughts from either you, Deborah, or anybody else who's listening, and of course from our main speaker. Thank you so much.
Well, I think you can do breathing exercise before going to bed. It will help you for more general sleep. And if you wake up in the midnight, you can also sleep again. You can read books that will help to put you sleep. You can also listen to some plain music that will also help you to go to sleep.